met my husband in Japan, got married in Japan, became a housewife in Japan, became a mother in Japan.
Hi! Oh, wonderful. Thank you for coming to the
Hi.
video. Thank you so much. I am honored to have you here on my channel. If you don't mind, could you please introduce yourself?
Thank you so much for inviting me. My name is Amanda. Maybe a lot of people on the internet know me either as like Ramanda B, Ramanda B Daisuke, Ramanda and Sapporoshi. I'm a 33-year-old mom. I guess the one thing I'm known for is being married to a Japanese salaryman and having two adorable kids.
They are adorable, if I do say so myself. I'm glad to have you here. Let's get started. So
Okay.
the first question is, what is your nationality and what is your spouse's nationality?
So I'm just American, I guess. I'm African American. Actually, my dad is from Nigeria, so I'm definitely like African American.
Really? Oh,
And my husband is Japanese, full-blown Japanese.
let's continue on. So where and how did you and your spouse meet?
Oh my goodness. So long ago, not that long ago. Actually, I was on JET. I was teaching. I was about in my second year of teaching in Hokkaido. And I was notorious for going to the downtown area called Susukino. And there was this dance club I used to go to, a really small hole in the wall. My husband at that time, he like never really would go out, but I guess he went out with a coworker. And like as soon as I walked in the door, I guess he had kind of like saw me and just made like a beeline across the whole entire dance club and like just like swept me away and wanted to just talk to me the entire time. And we exchanged information that day, and come to find out that I actually taught, or I was teaching at the high school that he had graduated from like years ago.
Seriously?
And his family actually lived like down the street from where I lived. And so we just went on a first date, went real fast from there.
Oh my goodness. That's so romantic though. My goodness. He knew. He saw
Yeah.
you and was like, yep, it's her. It's her.
I know,
Oh,
like I know maybe somebody would be like, whoa, that's a little weird, but it worked.
third question is, how did you two start dating? Was there a love confession or did it just kind of happen?
Like his kokuhaku was pretty much like, I want to take care of you, and I can't say that he is like faltered on that at all. So he, through conversation, learned that I love Rilakuma, the little bear character with
Oh
like,
yeah.
I mean, I have something right here with him on it. So he's like my favorite character of all time, and he learned about that, and he's like, oh my god, let's go to the Rilakuma store. And he's like, well, pick something that you want. And I was like, I can't pick. And he's like, okay, then just get two things. And I was like, okay. And from then we just like hung out all the time. Our lives just like melded.
But it seems really natural, like almost like effortless, you could say.
Yeah, it
'Cause
was
if
very
you
effortless. Yeah, and I think it's also too, we were a little older. When I went to Japan to work on the JET program, I was like, I turned like 25, and I had been in a long-term relationship all throughout college. So like when I went to Japan, I kind of like jumped back into being single and, had my fun and was acting wild, but then it got kind of boring. And he's 6 years older than me, so I guess like at the time we were both kind of like in that mental space of wanting to get to the next stage in our lives, and it just worked out that way that we were just like, okay, cool.
Honestly, that's awesome because it seems like you two were like in the same headspace. You both wanted the same thing and you convey that to each other and it just worked.
Yeah, it just worked.
Were you each other's first interracial significant other?
Not for me. I kind of have dated the spectrum. I mean, I was a military brat, so we moved around all of the time, and on the military bases where I grew up, there were just kids from everywhere. And I mean, I didn't date a lot because I had, like I said, my dad's from Nigeria, so I had very strict parents, so I didn't get to do anything.
I know it. My parents are Canadian. I feel you. I feel you.
But I mean, I always had crushes on just anyone. I wasn't really more attracted to one race or the other. I just kind of was more attracted to the person. But my long-term boyfriend in college, he was Black. But then when I moved to Japan, I didn't really go with the goal to like date Japanese people or to, marry one and stay there forever. I just kind of was like, well, we'll see what happens. But for him, he didn't really date a whole lot either. I mean, he had past girlfriends, but he was in Japan, which is like such a homogenous country. He like didn't really date anyone else. But I mean, he always was kind of like a little interested in like, hip hop, and he's really into like cool brands like Supreme and like Bape, and there's like a lot of like Black influence in those. So he's had like, I guess, like his like dipped his toe in some exposure, but maybe he never thought that he would ever meet a Black woman. Maybe that's what attracted him to me.
Probably. I mean, we're honestly like unicorns in broad daylight. That's what I like to call
him meeting me. It ended up working out more than just like the surface level.
Man, he a lucky guy.
I would think so. We've heard a lot that people would be like, oh yeah, he must be Korean. Like that's probably, and we're like, okay, but no.
It's like, yeah, not quite.
I don't know how to feel about that, but yeah, we've heard comments like that before, and we're like, oh. But then he's also had a lot of people who are just like, wow, he doesn't always like say it up front when he meets people, or like his coworkers. A lot of them like don't know that I'm not Japanese until like we finally meet, or the conversation kind of gets brought up, and they're always like, wait, what? And they're always surprised.
Oh, sure, pleasantly surprised though. Oh my goodness, how progressive. So let's continue to the next question. Okay, number 5 is, how did your families react when they found out you two were a couple?
So for my mom, it was very simple. She was just like, oh my God, like, WW, like she was just so excited that I was with someone. I'm like the middle child, and like, I guess like everyone else. We understand each other's pain.
Yes, we do.
And so I was kind of the one who was in a relationship, and then that got broken. And I'm pretty sure my mom was like, oh my God, is she ever going to get married? So she was excited about that. And my dad, he was just as excited. He kind of assumed that maybe I would follow in his footsteps, because he came to America when he was a college student, and then met my mom, and then they've been together ever since. So he was just like, I see you're following in my footsteps, and like, I understand, that this is your choice and this is your life. And I'm not surprised that you would have a love like this in a whole nother country. We support you. Just make sure that he takes care of you.
Good. And it seems like he does. It seems like
he hasn't lied about that at all.
So next is number 6. How long have you two been married?
So we have been married, this past March actually was 6 years. It went by really fast, because our relationship started off really fast. So I always like, wait, is it only been 6 years? Is it 7 years? How many years? But yeah, we're going on 7 years together, but 6 years married.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
Did you and your husband have a ceremony?
We did not. So what ended up happening was we both were in Hokkaido, and his job actually was transferring him like soon after we started dating down to Fukuoka. And that's when he like did his whole Kokohaku confession and was like, please, will you come down to Fukuoka with me? And I'm like, hey, I have this great job. Yeah. And so I quit Jet, which I had a lot of people who were real upset about that, but I actually left on really good terms. And when we moved down to Fukuoka, we were both just, he was trying to get situated with his job, and I was job hunting on my end. But pretty much as soon as I got a job, that like 2 weeks later, we found out that I was pregnant with our first daughter. And so we were just like, oh, okay, so you need like insurance, so let's go to the courthouse and get married. And so we just did that.
What surprised you about being married?
Oh my goodness. What surprised me? I think
like what you were not prepared for.
What I was not prepared for was, probably really having to bite your tongue on a lot of things. You're so used to having like your own space and your own routines and own way of doing things. But because we had kids like so quickly, there was just like a lot of changes all of the time. And maybe one way that you think about doing things, your partner may not, or they may have like a whole other idea, or they may not know at all. And having to get used to like the differences in the way that maybe they think about certain things. I always just kind of feel like I can't base it off of one thing or another, because it could be cultural differences. It could be the age difference. It could be the fact that I'm a woman and he's a man. It's just like the melding of lives together. It's way deeper than just like living in the same space. He just like sat and told me like this traditional like Japanese story about like a poor husband and a poor wife, and they both ended up like selling this precious item of theirs to support the other one, but because they didn't communicate, they didn't know what each other's plans were, and so their plans kind of got bumbled up. I can't remember the story verbatim, but I remember him telling me that, and it was like I can tell that he wants to support me, and he knows that I want to support him, but he knows that for the both of us, despite our language barriers and difficulties, that communication is the thing that's going to keep us together.
So let's like keep it rolling, keep the ball rolling. So
All right.
next is, what disagreements have you encountered in your intercultural marriage?
Oh my goodness. Honestly, I feel like because I have always been very interested in Japan and have always been very interested in like Japanese culture, not just the traditional things or the Japanese language. I always was really interested in just like normal Japanese life. And so that has molded a lot of like the trajectory that I have taken in like a relationship or as a parent. I think of the biggest breakdowns in our relationship probably has to do with parenting style. I feel like my husband is very laid back, almost to a fault.
He
And so the
seems
kids,
really chill.
he's like very chill, like very little phases him until he's like tired. But he's very like laid back with the kids, which is great because I can be kind of high strung. But there's a lot of times where I'm like, sometimes we have to have a little bit of order in this house. And he's just like, oh, it's cool. And I feel like a lot of times I like, almost like upset myself for having more expectations from him. But I feel like he's also the kid's saving grace when I'm just like, "Rah!" And he's just like chill. But I feel like especially in the beginning, because for me, I suffered from postpartum depression and anxiety. And at those early stages of, them being babies, I just felt like we were like tug of war a lot of times, where I was like, he was also very busy at work too. And I was feeling like I'm doing everything. And so when I would express my grievances, I would kind of get like knocked back down to earth. I think a lot of it is because I'm so worried about the kids. And obviously he is too. But since he's so laid back, it doesn't stress him out as much. But yeah, we're definitely like, fire and ice, yin and yang. But somehow it just like always helps us to kind of like meet in the middle, and things kind of like somehow work out.
Probably got some well-rounded kids then, I'll say that.
I hope so. Literally, that is all I pray for. Please don't let them take my crazy.
Oh, I'm sure they'll be fine. Actually, the next question is, do you have children? Even though I already know the answer, but for the audience.
Yes, we have two little girls. We have a 5-year-old named Kina and a almost 4-year-old named Layla.
Oh, Layla-chan. Oh, so cute. So the next question is, are they bilingual?
Yes, they are full-blown bilingual. It's absolutely amazing. One of the things that we always agreed on from the beginning is that we were going to not mess this up for them. We knew that this is, there's the whole idea of them being half, and we don't necessarily believe that they're half of each of our cultures. They are two whole cultures blended together.
Double. That's what they are.
Yes. And, as much as I'm very interested in like Japanese culture, I definitely am very strict about like the English and our usage in our household, because I want them to be able to have the opportunity to be able to dive into either one of our cultures and languages, and to have whatever opportunity that presents for them. And so ever since they started school, we've always tried to enroll them in at least bilingual school. But now that we're in America, we've been in America the last 3 years. Their first school was bilingual, but now that we've moved over to the East Coast, they're in a full-blown Japanese school, which we feel is great. I want to hone their Japanese ability because I can't teach that to them. And he works so much that he can't necessarily like sit there and like teach all the grammatical things and like intricate nuances of the language. But because we live in America, I feel like English has come so naturally
Oh,
just from
definitely.
the
They will get
environment.
it.
Yeah.
But I do have another question. Do they have like a language preference? Do you notice them leaning more towards English than Japanese, or more towards Japanese than English?
It's interesting. Right now, they actually seem to enjoy Japanese a lot more, which I was completely surprised by because I felt like it would be English because, I feel like children, since they spend, in most family dynamics, they spend the majority of their time near the
Their
mother.
mother.
So they're going to pick up the mother's native tongue.
Yeah, mother
And
tongue. That's why they call it that.
yeah, that's why it's called mother tongue. But I think it's because my youngest, now that she's enrolled in, preschool, kindergarten, Japanese preschool and kindergarten, now that she's able to talk a lot more and they have this commonality of going to the same school and having friends there and activities that they mutually get to do together, they seem to enjoy playing and speaking in Japanese with one another. And I mean, we do watch a bunch of different things in both languages, but I think they've always really been more drawn to the Japanese side of it, which is very interesting to me because I speak mainly English to them. I mean, we have like a kind of garbled up mixture of both languages,
Mhm.
but for the most part right now, they feel very comfortable in Japanese.
I feel like they are in the best possible position right now because they have access to both of their heritages, and I feel like
Mhm.
that's like the most important thing for them to be able
Right.
to like keep touch.
Mhm.
And I don't see that fading away. Like
Yeah.
even if they end up moving again, like I don't see
Yeah.
that fading.
I can't help but to be jealous a little bit of we're around a lot of like chuzai, like Japanese families that are working in America, and it's usually like both Japanese parents. There's a few where it's a Japanese mother and like an American father, or they're
Mhm.
both Japanese. But the children that I see that are growing up with a Japanese speaking mother,
Mhm.
I see the level of proficiency that they have, and I can't help but to be just like a little jealous because they are definitely way more proficient than my kids. But to see the leaps and bounds that they have had over just the last 6 months of us living here and them going to a fully Japanese school, I'm like, okay, they're not like up there, but they're definitely not like super far behind.
It seems like they're within their age range. Like, I
Mhm.
mean, they're not like even really that old, if I can't say so.
Yeah.
Like they're still quite young. But even because I was an English teacher as well, and I did have that like the ability to like communicate with them, it seemed like they were talking at the same level, honestly. The next question is
Mhm.
about food. So what food do you primarily consume in your house? Does it lean more towards American cuisine, or does it lean more towards Japanese cuisine?
Well, you already know this question is like near and dear to my heart because I love food, but also, like I was saying before, like a lot of what I have learned in my adult life has come from Japan and Japanese style of things. So when I never really cooked when I was in America and even in college, I dabbled in it here and there, but I didn't really start cooking until I was in Japan and became a housewife. And that's just all we were used to. That's all my kids were raised on was, the traditional rice porridge for babies. And we've, I mean, we just cook Japanese food. Not every day, but I'm trying now to kind of dive more into like more traditional, like Western American meals. But those don't really slap as hard as the Japanese do.
I feel you. I feel you. I feel like they've just got like a richer culture in general. No, no shade to America.
No shade, but I mean, the food is quite delicious. Japanese food is like, that's like in my heart. I love it. That is the hardest, is just he is very, as dedicated as he is to our family, his focus is more on